Cut to the outside, the young man Han is also fighting a black knight. At this moment, he is only seen leaning back slightly to dodge the knight's slash. Then, he bent down again to dodge the next attack. And immediately, Han caught the knight's opening and directly stabbed him in the waist, causing the knight to cry out in pain. Then, Han also turned around and slashed down another knight who was trying to sneak attack him. His body was almost moving on its own. The effects from Mr. Zeke's training are really amazing, Han thought to himself. Hurry up, stop the Carwoodman, some knight shouted. But just as they were about to rush up, countless sharp stone pillars suddenly shot up from the ground, blocking the advance of this group of people. The one who took action was none other than his friend Snock. If I can destroy this narrow passage, I can take them all down, but that might not be a good idea. What if the entire cave collapses? Snock thought to himself, before suddenly a sound rang out, attracting the attention of everyone, and then, following their gaze, the barrier protecting the temple was lowered in the eyes of the dumbfounded black knights. The barrier is gone, they said in confusion. And old man Wige on this side also sighed in relief. It seems that Zeke has succeeded. Then, not letting those energy strands touch Han, Snock next to him controlled a boulder. Flying to block them. Be careful, senior, he shouted and started controlling more large boulders. Aiming straight at Immer, like a rain, but facing this attack, Immer gave a faint smile, and then a strand of energy started shooting out from the palm of his hand, wrapping tightly around all these boulders and tightening them, causing the boulders to be cut into many pieces. Looking at this, both Snock and Han were sweating profusely. What is that? The boulder was cut so easily. Not letting him say any more, Immer started waving his fingertips to control the strand. Seeing this, Han also sensed danger and hurriedly shouted, Snock, run away. As soon as he finished speaking, several strands of energy rushed straight towards Snock with lightning speed, but fortunately, at this moment Han rushed over in time, using the Estelade sword to block the attack, and then he also used all his strength to press hard the sword forward and shattered these strands, while also releasing an energy slash straight towards Immer. Seeing this, Immer also frowned uncomfortably. Immediately after, a large explosion occurred at his location. As for Han, after launching the attack, he turned and asked, Snock, are you okay? Snock nodded and replied, yes, thanks to you, senior, I survived. But senior, there's something stuck to your sword. Hearing this, Han noticed his sword again, and discovered that several strands of energy were wrapped around the sword's body. This made his eyes widen. What is this made of? My hand still feels numb. Next to him, Snock frowned and observed a little, then made a judgment. Looking closely, it's clear that this isn't an ordinary strand. It's a type of weapon made from an alloy of different metals. It's thin, so it's flexible, but it's also long and sharp. On the opposite side, after the explosion cleared, Immer's figure reappeared and he wasn't hurt at all. In his hand, he was holding several strands to control them. At this time, it was only seen that the strands, as if they had their own thoughts, wrapped tightly around the Estelade sword. Next, he pulled these strands strongly. That almost caused Han to lose his sword. His teeth clenched together, and he swung hard. The sword once again caused these strings to break into many pieces. Then the blonde guy realized he couldn't stand still and let Immer attack. He took the initiative to rush forward, and said, Snock, help me. Hearing that, Snock also used his abilities, creating sharp pillars of stone that rushed forward, but of course, this simple attack couldn't do anything to Immer. With just a movement of his fingers, he easily controlled these strings to cut away all the sharp stone pillars, and also blocked Han's attack. For Han, these strings were really driving him crazy. What the hell kind of string is this so tough? Han muttered to himself, but before he could cut away these strings, the formation of the surrounding soldiers was broken. Heart-wrenching screams began to echo everywhere as the soldiers began to be pushed back. A large monster grabbed a hapless woman. Seeing this, Han hurriedly said, Hey, Snock, save that person first. But what about you, sir? Snock asked. I can handle myself. Hurry up, Han shouted, and then without hesitation, Snock hurriedly ran to rescue everyone, leaving Han alone to face Immer. As soon as Snock left, Immer smirked and transmitted his mana into the strings, causing these strings to be covered in a purple flame. Suddenly, they exploded. A deafening sound echoed in the air, and dirt and rocks were blown everywhere. Han's body flew like a cannonball into a nearby wall. With great effort, Han used his sword to support his body to stand up. His whole body ached indescribably. Damn it, that hurts so bad, Han cursed under his breath. Before he noticed some men standing fearfully beside him, the familiar faces of them reminded Han of something. These are the guys who caused trouble for us in the bar. They had laughed at his and Snock's dream of becoming heroes. They were so loud back then, but now they're no different from dogs, he thought to himself. However, Immer had no intention of standing still and watching him daydream. He continuously launched strings forward, causing the thugs to turn pale with fear, only knowing to raise their hands to shield themselves. Luckily for them, Han wasn't the type to hold a grudge, so he still rushed to save these people's lives. Damn it, worrying about myself is hard enough, now I have to worry about these guys too, Han said as he swung his sword like a machine to block the sharp strings. However, any defense has its limits. In just a moment of carelessness, the strings tightly wrapped around his left arm and began to squeeze hard, causing his arm to bleed continuously. Behind him, the two thugs were stunned to see Han protecting them. Only Han felt furious that these nuisances were still here. He couldn't help but shout, "Do you have eyes in your ass? Run!" Hearing that, how could the thugs dare to hesitate any longer? They immediately took off running. Seeing this, Immer in front couldn't help but tease, "How touching, looks like they are important to you, huh?" In response, Han hurriedly denied his relationship with those people. "Not really, they're just dogs who used to cause trouble for me." His answer surprised Immer. "Oh, so you still saved them, even got hurt for them?" Han replied with a forced smile, "But it's not like they committed a capital crime." Hearing this, Immer began to understand something. "No wonder Estelade chose you with that kind of personality. But even so, I can't let you keep that, because it already has an owner." Han said, "Whoever picks this up owns it." Immer nodded in agreement with this. "That's right, besides, what belongs to the dead, whoever picks it up owns it." When he said this, Immer's voice was full of murderous intent. Meanwhile, Han didn't know how to escape the current situation. "This is annoying, I don't have the strength to move anymore. Am I really going to die here?" Han muttered to himself. Then at this moment, a hand suddenly reached out and grabbed the strings. Next, sword streaks began to rush in, slashing apart the strings wrapped around Han's arm. The sudden change in the situation surprised both Han and Immer. They both turned their eyes to where the attack came from, and they only saw an explosion occur. The bodies of the monsters and the black cloaks began to fly everywhere like torn sacks. Even after that, these sources of energy were directed straight towards Immer, only a little unfortunately. That Immer reacted extremely quickly, so he retreated to dodge in time. And the person who just arrived, of course, is none other than our main character, Zeke. Seeing the male lead appear, Han was very happy. "Welcome back, Mr. Zeke," he said cheerfully. Returning to Zeke's perspective, when he looked at the sword in Han's hand, he was also able to confirm his thoughts. "Why are you holding that sword?" Hearing that, Han also raised the sword in his hand and shrugged his shoulders to explain. "Ah, this thing, I tried to pull it out and it came out." Hearing that, Zeke didn't know what to say. And beside him, the female mage Layla asked incomprehensibly, "Isn't that a sword that only chooses its owner? How can two people be able to pull it out?" Zeke answered her with a shake of his head. "It seems that this holy sword has some problems, but at least it proves that he has developed to the point of being recognized by Estelade. Congratulations on taking another step closer to the title of hero by holding the sword." The praise from Zeke made Han's face flush with excitement. Thank you, sir," he stammered. Before Zeke stroked his chin in complaint. However, it seemed like the sword's owner selection function was broken. Before he could finish his words, a giant had already charged into the middle of them to disrupt the fight, its powerful fist hitting straight into the center of the group, causing a large dent to appear on the ground. Shockwaves continuously released outwards, and the three of them also jumped back to dodge. The reason why this giant dared to attack the three of them so aggressively was all because of the Immer standing still behind him. How could his state escape Zeke's eyes? He started frowning in thought. At first glance it seemed like he was attacking all of us. But the real target was Layla. On this side, Layla also looked at the giants charging towards her. She thought to herself, "There are too many of them, so she must use a big move." Having said that, just as she was about to use her magic, he rushed forward. At the same time, he swung the sword in his hand, creating a blue blade that cut through everything in front, slashing the giants into pieces. But this is also one of the things that Immer wants, right now. His threads began to separate from the giants' body parts and simultaneously rushed towards them. On the main character's side, the strings seemed to have thoughts. His own and wrapped his arms around the sword in his hand and yanked it out of Zeke's hand. Then more ropes flew over, wrapping his arms and legs tightly. This made Layla a little panicked. Then another one came. The rope around Zeke's neck. "Look at this." The villain Immer also sneered. "It's over." After saying this, he also pulled hard on the strings in his hand. However, nothing happened after that. Zeke's body remained as steady as an iron statue and didn't move at all. His strings couldn't even Zeke his clothes. Looking at this, the Immer's eyes also rolled back. It seemed like this was the first time he encountered this situation, so he was a bit flustered. "What? Why can't it be cut?" Turning back to Zeke looking at the Immer's confused appearance, he couldn't help but laugh out loud. Haha, you think you've won. He said then he also strained to break the bonds of the ropes and slowly walked towards the Immer. You think I just act by the power of that sword alone, said. As if wanting to show the weakling his strength, Zeke grabbed the ropes in his hand and threw them down hard, causing his face to. The ground cracked into countless pieces, and rocks and debris were shot everywhere like bullets. Meanwhile, the Immer also raised his hands above his face to avoid getting hit, and in the meantime, the main character also walked close to him and smiled loudly. So when I let go of the sword, you think Sungwon is all there, right? But you're not entirely wrong. I can only say that you have misjudged the power of that sword. It's simple, it just helps me use all my magic power, so even without the sword, my power is not lost. How? Isn't that little hope sweet? Zeke said with a smirk, his hand, like an iron clamp, slowly tightened around Immer's neck like strangling a chicken. His whole body trembled a few times then let go because he was going to meet the king of hell. Time quickly passed until the next morning. At this time, everyone inside the city was working together to clean up the aftermath of the battle. In a corner, some carpenters were also talking to each other. Hey, lift this up a little, be careful, the piece is on fire, it could collapse at any moment. The scene changes to a certain room that is still somewhat intact. Zeke looks at the sword placed on the table, then strokes his chin thinking, what is this after all? This is definitely not something ordinary. Even if it was just for a moment, it had awakened the magic that was sleeping deep inside me. If I continue to use it, maybe I will understand it more clearly. Thinking of this, suddenly turned to face the door and said, come in, it's outside. Is the magician Layla? She opened the door, stepped inside, and asked curiously, how did you know? I didn't even knock on the door. In response to her words, Zeke also glanced at her with an appraising gaze. If I can't even sense the aura of a mage, then I'd better hang up my sword and go farming. Farming doesn't sound right at all, Layla teased back, but leaving this aside, Zeke asked directly, so what's the matter? In front, the mage girl's face also had a bit of seriousness as she said, you want to know the information that I hold, right? Zeke scratched his head and ears in confusion and said, isn't that part over already? Not letting him finish his words, Layla declared, I will tell you, but on one condition. The scene shifts to outside. A man is looking at the workers who are actively working to restore the houses and size. They said they will continue the restoration work, but there are too many damaged places, not sure if they can be restored to their original state or not. Our city has been invaded by monsters, who would want to come here to travel anymore. After saying that, the uncle also rubbed his face in frustration, and the two young men behind him also turned to look at each other. Then, the black-haired youth also spoke up to suggest, Sir, Mr. Mayor, why don't we use stories to attract people? Like a nightmare has taken over the city, it's terrible, but aren't there heroes who helped us escape that nightmare? Let's create stories about the heroes' exploits and spread it around. And we can also erect a statue in the center of this town. What do you think? Hearing this, the mayor's eyes lit up and he stroked his chin in agreement. Good idea. We can make the reputation of those who are helping us resound throughout the world. It is also a way to repay them. Behind the scenes, the redhead also voiced his suggestion. Furthermore, how about giving the heroes titles to make them easier for tourists to remember? Regarding this idea, the mayor also laughed in agreement. That's a great idea too. For example, like the person named Snock who used the power of the earth, we can call him the champion of the great earth. The person named Layla is good at using magic, call her the champion of the demonic path. The person named Han wielded a sword containing light, call him the champion of the sun. And the person named Zeke with overwhelming power, how about we express our respect with the title champion of power? Back with Zeke who didn't know that the town leaders were secretly giving him titles, he also complained to the sorceress Layla, making conditions isn't a good habit. Not paying attention to these words, Layla also pointed to the sword on the table and asked, are you going to use this sword forever? Zeke heard that, focused on the sword, and nodded. Probably, although I don't know its exact origin, it has helped me awaken all of my magic power. Even if it's only temporary, it's like Estelade or Tornium, it seems that the sword itself gives power to the user. Hearing this, Layla couldn't hide her curiosity and asked which of the three weapons was the strongest. You've used them all, right? Zeke replied that the power that this sword provides is greater. Back to Layla. Zeke's answer also made her sigh with relief. Oh, then there's no need to use Tornium, right? I only have one condition, use this sword carefully and don't even think about touching Tornium. On the opposite side, Zeke was really a little confused, not understanding why Layla was so fixated on forcing him not to touch that Tornium sword. He replied, from the moment I saw this sword, I had no intention of using other things, so now what should I ask you, is asking. About your identity too vague. In response, Layla also reminded, I said my memories aren't clear, Zeke asked. Since when have your memories become vague? Regarding this question, Layla's face had some memories of the past and said, I don't know, when I woke up, I found myself running away. I can't remember anything about myself, about the person who is chasing me or the reason I was being chased. I only have the feeling that I am not allowed to be caught, and faint memories of the future appear in my head. Therefore, I decided to hide in the ruins, but unexpectedly. They found me there, also unexpectedly. Because they wanted to find me, they turned the city into this. Speaking to this point, Layla couldn't hold back and was tearing up, seeing that. Immediately took out a handkerchief and handed it to her, while comforting her. I told you, it's not your fault. Back to Layla's perspective, looking at the handkerchief in front of her, she was a little surprised. After a few seconds, she also said, I didn't expect you to know how to comfort me too. Zeke crossed his arms and blamed, I'm a bad guy, but I've decided to live a virtuous life. His words made the sorceress laugh. What do you mean? Putting this aside, Zeke also asked why Layla was in 40. Layla also said that I wanted to confirm something. I wanted to confirm that my memories were really accurate. In my memory, the person closest to me is a vampire. But without letting her say another word, Zeke leaned back and waved his hand. If you're talking about the vampire Johiman, then it seems you're mistaken. Now, he is no longer a vampire, Johiman. Dracula is the Count of Drakel. At first Layla was stunned for a few beats, but then she quickly realized the problem and asked, did you change the future? Zeke nodded in response, that's right, so now he won't become a vampire anymore. Why did you do that? Layla asked curiously. And Zeke said directly, I've decided to live a virtuous life. If he becomes a bad guy, I'll have to deal with him. I don't want to have to do that to someone who used to be my confidant. After listening, Layla also asked cautiously, you really don't want to become Zeke more? Zeke turned to look at her and replied, at least for now I haven't thought about that, I've decided to live a virtuous life. His voice was full of determination, making the girl couldn't help but tease him, but I still remember clearly what you did when you killed Immer yesterday. You're being too confident. Zeke stuck out his tongue, looked away, and shrugged, killing bad guys is a good thing. The main character's tricky response made Layla just sigh and add, so what else do you want to ask? Let's see, maybe I've asked everything, Zeke replied, but immediately after that, he suddenly remembered something and spoke up, Brave. What is that name? Zeke said curiously, when he remembered Elle mentioning the name Brave before. The atmosphere inside the room suddenly became silent. A few seconds later, Layla explained, Zeke Brave. That's the name you used when fighting as a hero in the future. Hearing this, Zeke was totally dazed. He pointed at himself incredulously and asked, me? Returning to Layla's perspective, she wasn't really sure about this thought. I'm not very confident either, because my memories are unclear, so I don't know how you became a hero and how you lived your life. But Zeke Brave once had a timeline where he would definitely become a hero. Over here, Zeke clapped his hands together, as if realizing something and affirming, is that so? Then I will absolutely not use the surname Brave anymore in the future. Suit yourself. Layla shrugged, seemingly not caring much about this. It seemed that as long as Zeke didn't become a demon king, she didn't care what he became. Ignoring these frivolous jokes, Zeke stroked his chin and thought, then asked, so, the sword I used back then was Estelade, but now, I'm not brave anymore, so how can I hold the Estelade? Could it be because of that thing? Zeke exclaimed, as if remembering something. Hearing this, Layla immediately asked, what thing? Before Zeke could answer, Han and Snock had carefully packed their luggage and entered the room. Zeke, it's time to depart. Seeing him appear, the main character nodded and said, oh, perfect timing, Han. Quickly, let me see the Estelade. Hearing this request, Han hurriedly gripped his sword tightly and asked tearfully, but why? Not allowing his attendant to say anything more, Zeke interrupted, I just want to check it, don't be so tense, I'm not going to take it. From behind, the sorceress peeked out and asked, check what? Zeke replied, I want to see if the reason I can hold the Estelade is thanks to the key to changing fate or not. Then, in his heart, he speculated, even though it's just speculation, I feel like Estelade is related to the key to changing fate. Now my finger doesn't have the key to changing fate anymore. If they're related, I definitely won't be able to hold it. Unaware of Zeke's thoughts, Han saw that Zeke had no intention of stealing the sword, so he handed it over. And in the expectant eyes of everyone, Zeke reached out and took it very gently. This caused all of Zeke's previous speculations to vanish into thin air. Oh, I can still hold it, I really can still hold it, Snock replied. Meanwhile, the sorceress Layla secretly said, Zeke is an idiot in her heart. Next, Zeke threw the sword back to Han. Alright, this is your sword, Han, remember to take good care of it. Alright, let's leave this place now, he said as he stretched wearily. Before remembering something and turning back to remind Layla, oh right, Layla, I have a proposition I want to tell you. Time passed quickly. Switching scenes to the middle of a forest, at this time Han and Snock were sleeping like logs. While Zeke and Layla were still sitting and watching the fire, then they noticed Han's earth-shattering snoring and said, "Those guys must be really tired." Layla replied with an agreeing nod, "They must be, the road here was quite difficult." She spoke, recalling moments from earlier. To get to this place, everyone had to go through countless battles, or rather, only Han and Snock fought, while Zeke and Layla sat back and relaxed. Regarding his actions, Zeke explained that it was a continuation of their training. So, to prepare for tomorrow, we should go to bed early. Returning to Layla's perspective. Before going to sleep, she hurriedly asked, "Wait, what was the proposition you were talking about? When are you going to tell me?" To this question, Zeke smiled teasingly. "Oh, I can tell you that tomorrow. There's still plenty of time to rest." His carefree attitude, not paying attention to her question, made Layla furious and she growled, "What did you just say?" Ignoring her annoyed attitude, Zeke continued to advise, "You're tired too, get some sleep." "Are you really going to sleep like that?" Layla sighed. Then he suddenly asked, "Hey Layla, when we first met, why did you look at me with that look?" Layla's look at that time was indescribable. It had something emotional, nostalgic, and regretful about it. That look has stuck with the main character until now. Unfortunately, Layla couldn't explain her expression at that time specifically. "I don't know either, I just had that feeling at the time." "I knew you would say that." Zeke sighed in disappointment, causing the frustration in Layla's heart to return. She turned to mock, "Hey, what about you suddenly bringing up that thing with me?" "It's because you look suspicious," Zeke replied. But Layla didn't give in. "Compared to you, who will become the Demon King in the future, what am I?" Zeke stuck out his tongue and teased, "But I'm not the Demon King yet, am I? If you have anything you want to ask, go ahead and ask. I'll answer everything before I go to sleep," he said, yawning. And after a few seconds of silence, Layla spoke her mind. "Hey, that thing you said you would propose to me, could it be that?" Before the words were even out of her mouth, she noticed he was sleeping like a log. This made Layla unable to hide her surprised expression and she whispered, "He fell asleep so fast." Switching scenes to the morning, at this time, a persistent call echoed. "Wretch." The continuous sound startled our main character awake. The person calling him was the Saintess Lavella. Seeing the main character awake, she smiled and said, "Did you sleep well?" Over here, Zeke sat up and nodded. "Yeah, did Lavella sleep well too?" Next to him, a muscular guy also greeted him. "Are you all awake yet?" "Oh yes, Tu-Do is also sleeping." "Yep," Zeke replied, before his attention was drawn to some shouting. "The elves are really useless. If I were a few hundred years younger, I'd be much stronger than you." This shout came from an old man, and before his scolding, the blue-haired elf girl nodded it off. All right, you're a wizard who's a whole lot younger than I am." Watching their argument, the group could only shake their heads and sigh, as if they had witnessed it many times before. The big guy, Tu-Do, spoke up, advising, "If you're awake, please help me stop those two, it's unbearable." But, Zekiap replied with a sigh and went to clap to get both of their attention. "All right, let's quickly prepare breakfast and set off." "Come on, isn't it both of your shifts today?" the male lead said, patting them both on the shoulder. "Put the bickering on hold for now." Behind them, the Saintess Lavella smiled in agreement. "It must be tiring every day," Zeke replied. "It's normal, it's always like this." Behind, Lavella began to recall Zeke's actions and praised him. "Keep it up, you're great at leading such a strong group." Her words surprised Zeke a bit. "The Saintess of Kwam, Lavella, is vouching for it, that gives me a bit more confidence." Hearing that, Lavella smiled slightly. "If you feel confident because of my reassurance, then I'm always ready to tell you, hero." The image ended there, and he suddenly opened his eyes wide and hurriedly sat up. His whole body was covered in sweat. His breath became rapid, while the others were still fast asleep. Some thoughts appeared in his mind. What is this dream? Next to him, the sword next to him was constantly glowing and shaking.